And then you think about it with businesses where they're creating all that data. It's also created by individuals, majority of it, and then they have to manage it. And depending on their type of business, it's going to depend upon how they're going to store that data. So you think about the various types of storage. You're talking about their workstations, their servers, their disk arrays, their tape libraries, their DVDs, whatever. I mean, it's the amount of the business. And that's just data. And then we talk about, well, how does that data then become valuable? When does it become valuable to them to have all this data, and how are they managing it, and how are they protecting it, and all of that? So with individuals, I like to talk about the fact that, when IDC did the study for EMC, they focused on looking at the digital footprint, kind of termed that for the individual. So you're creating all of your own data that I already mentioned and storing it. Well, what's more scary is the information that's created about you every day that you might not even be aware of. You go to the ATM, guess what? They're taking video surveillance of you, right? You're doing your web histories, all your banking and financing, right? All of that stuff. And they're projecting that there's more information created about you than you create yourself. And last year, in 2007, the average per person was 45 megabytes of information. Okay, so it's kind of scary when you think about it, and it brings up a lot of issues around security, privacy, and the management of that information. I mean, when we take it to the company level, like I know at least in the Boston area, because that's where I live and work now, TJX was in the media because all their credit card information became available, right? And that sets off a storm, right, of people. So I think you take that to the next level you take it over to the business side when we look at businesses and why do they need to keep and maintain this information? Why is that important? Well, there's a few reasons. So I like to put it down into like a realistic situation. So here they have Safeway on the West Coast, out on the East Coast they have Stop and Shop and Shaw's and all these supermarkets. Well, everybody typically has a value card, right? Why do they have that? Well, you swipe it and then those grocery stores can decide, and they keep that data over time, right? And they can look at buying patterns, what products are going to do well, how should they stock new products, or should they phase this out, or should they bring it? What specials should they run? All of that stuff. Well, they need to have a storage infrastructure to be able to keep that data and be able to look at it. You think of data sets or business intelligence and looking at that. Same with Amazon or any of these internet companies. You go there, you buy a book or you buy some products, and then they say, well, you should think about this book or you should think about buying this video, right? Well, how are they doing that? Because they're keeping all of these patterns and trends, and they're able to then analyze and decide how should they run their business. So it is really important for them to be managing and maintaining this data. And when you think about nowadays, there isn't really time for the network to go down. I mean, no company really, I think, has planned outages for any major applications or infrastructure things, right? So it's really like 24/7, uptime and reliability. If you go to United to buy an airline ticket and you can't get on or see the seats available, that's going to frustrate you, especially if it's an immediate thing or a needed thing. You might go to American or a different site, or Orbitz versus Expedia or whatever it is. So if you think about lost revenue, if networks go down, how much do you think it is for like a retail company per hour if their network goes down or it's not available to them?
Like Macy's or something?
Could be Macy'sOnline.com or Gap or whatever. Any idea how much it costs them per hour? The good news is, I have a hint there, it's in the millions of dollars, right? So retail, $1.1 million if their network's down per hour. And the list goes on, energy, $2.8 million. So it's really, they need to have continuous available, their infrastructure. And it gets very expensive if they don't. And who is affected? So here's a quick little status that 76% of IT people have said that they've either suffered a major disaster or they've had a disruption of their business. So it's not just, a few people here that have to worry about that. It's affecting pretty much everyone. A good example that I like to use, while sad, is think about 9/11. If those companies in those that had their data in those buildings didn't replicate their data to an off-site location, they're probably out of business.
A lot of them their backup was over in the other tower.
Yeah, you have to have it at a different off-site location. Yeah. Otherwise, they're going to be out of business because without their information, how are they going to continue to run their business?
Well, within a week of that, we got a small amount of money with invested through Oppenheimer funds. We got a letter from them saying, our stuff, our backup was way off site. We still got it all.
Yeah.
Don't worry about your investments.
Yeah.
And it was, I hadn't even really thought about it until then. I thought, oh, geez, I guess so, you know.
Yeah.
To thinking that if their backups were all there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something I can bring in. I bring into the classrooms, my classrooms here, talking about off-site data.
Oh, yeah.
Backup
It's,
needs
yeah.
have to be.
Here,
Absolutely.
things are stored an earthquake zone away.
Good. Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely.
We don't have as many earthquakes in Missouri, but
Right.
New Mandarin is actually a bigger fault.
Yeah.
Southern France.
Yeah, or hackers or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of things that can cause disruptions and issues besides natural disasters. So I do want to just talk about, like, a lot of people, and before I worked at EMC, I understand this, like, so when Cisco talked about networking, right? So LANs and WANs and setting up all that and computers and servers being able to communicate across distances. So a storage area network is similar to that. I mean, are any of you familiar with that or no? Storage area network, a little bit familiar with? Okay. So I kind of break it down very simply. I don't get up here, I'm not like super technical and say, here's this huge enterprise and here's all these servers, and because you can get lost in that a lot. So I break it down very simply. So we have our client, our local area network, our server, right? So the client's making lots of requests from the server, right? Well, if you have a big application and they're starting to really get hit, right, multiple times, well, that can bring your server down or slow performance, right, and crash it. And if you have to take it down for maintenance and all of these things, right, that it disrupts it. So what's the value? Well, if you have a storage area network, you can take that, all of a sudden now you're implementing multiple paths to that data. If you take that data from the server and move it over into a storage area network, right, which means that as people make requests for data, they're doing it that way and they're not hanging up your application on the server, right? And so that you have improved performance on your servers. And then it's easier to manage and protect that data when it's on a storage area network. And it becomes centrally located. So if you think of, 10 years ago, people were doing servers for each of the business units within a company. That data is it's distributed. You can't really know what you have. Maybe this group of the business unit would really benefit by having more data about this if it was centrally managed and people could centrally share it and look at it and evaluate and analyze it, right? And so when you have it on a shared platform, there's a lot more that you can do to protect it. You can dedupe it so you don't have to take up as much space. I mean, there's different ways that you can tier your storage and make it available. And then talked about your backup and things like that. So by tiering your storage, and when I think of tiered storage, you have your tier 1, so all your really fast storage platforms. And actually, this next slide, I think this is a good one to talk to that about. So this is EMC's storage platform. So just their hardware, not thinking about their software, right? And so when you think about it across the various types, and the green up there, so you have your content addressable storage, your archive, right? You can, like to use an example of like email. Well, a lot of people have email limits, right? And you can, I don't know, maybe not so much now, but if you get these notices, you're at your email box limit, right? You have to delete it, or you might create another place to store it locally. And now all of a sudden that's not accessible to the company if they're not backing up and they don't know about it and there's a lawsuit. They have to now come out to your PC. So there's a lot of digital information is become really critical for companies, because now when companies get sued, they have to be able to produce their electronically stored information. They can't say anymore, well, it's on a backup tape, but it's too expensive for me to get to. They have to be able to produce it in that first meet and greet with the lawyers. And that is a real liability for them. They don't know about their data. So I like to use email because what happens is if companies implement archiving with like a storage platform, they can take all the stuff that's 90 days or older and move it onto a much slower level of storage.